green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go! And a good victory Monday morning, Eagles fans. Appreciate you streaming in early with us here on Birds 365, the home of just one of only two undefeated teams at 3-0 in the National Football League. Yeah, the Giants are 2-0. We'll find out if they can get to 3-0 tonight. But we're here to talk about the beatdown that was the Eagles and the Commanders yesterday in Washington. And John McMullen had a front row seat. Well, not exactly front row. You're kind of off to the side. Down in the end zone.
In the end zone. Yeah. Was front row. Was front row in FedEx, though, the FedEx press box. But, whew, yeah. But,
yeah.
If
not
there's
the greatest.
Nothing nice to say. Yeah. Don't say it.
Oh, no. We can take shots.
I know. I'm joking.
Of a stadium anytime we want. And it was a dumpster fire for the Commanders yesterday. And the individuals lighting that fire were the Philadelphia Eagles on both offense and defense. For the second consecutive game, John, the Eagles have been dominant on both sides of the football. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about the O or the D. Watching yesterday's game, I had a tough time determining in my own mind which was more impressive, the offensive effort or the defensive effort. Do you just say a tie because they so commanded presence on both sides of the ball that it wasn't even a fair fight?
I would give a slight edge to the defense for this reason. I think the offense was a short, explosive burst in the second quarter, 24 points. And obviously a lot of that had to do, they were down at the end of the first quarter, the big Devontae Smith reception, toe tap, which I'm told he wasn't in, but you can't tell at FedEx Field because they don't have TVs that work that show you the replay. But nonetheless, I'm told it was probably not a catch. I don't know. You probably know better than me, Jody.
I would say that had they gone to review, there's a good chance they overturn it.
Yeah, but that's, I give the Eagles credit. I gave him credit for, hey, hurrying up, get that snap off. Ron Rivera doesn't get the information. Whatever happened from Washington's standpoint is not the concern of the Eagles. So It counts. It was a phenomenal catch, whether it was legal or not. And that, the explosion started from there. They scored 24 points. You had the short field on the forced fumble as well, which essentially sealed the game, went from 3-0 to 10-0. The game was over at that point. So the defense was more consistent throughout. That's why I'd give them a slight advantage. The 9 sacks, great game plan. They know Carson Wentz better than anybody, even though this coaching staff wasn't here. They have all the intel that they could ever need about the players that were here. But the vast majority of them, like Carson Wentz, it was big hug fest pregame. Carson hugging, even with Howie Roseman, a little bro hug between those two. Fletcher Cox loves Carson. Jason Kelsey loves him. Did the jersey swap after the game. Dallas Goedert, Lane Johnson. But they also know Carson. And, take away that first read, he's going to hold on to the football. It's exactly what happened. 9 sacks later, 2 forced fumbles, just a dominating performance from the defense and the defensive line, because it was, for the most part, 4-man rush, and they
Oh,
were
yeah.
getting home. And they took advantage. Look, I always say a lot of fans don't look at the opponent. So, the nitpicking today is going to be at the running game. Well, Jonathan Allen's really stinking good. Deron Payne's really stinking. And by the way, Nick Sirianni talked about that after game, but he talked about it all week behind the scenes, how good they were. I think Jonathan Allen would be a superstar in this league if he played on a good team. I think people would start to realize how good he was. In the first couple of games, they faced difficult tackles, so they were having trouble with the edge rush because they were playing good players. Here you have a backup center who was a disaster. You had Sam Cosmi, who was terrible, and bang, they take advantage of it. And that's what I love the most about this team, about Nick Sirianni. Rashad Wildgoose was William Jackson wasn't able to play. They knew that. They went right at him. They got 2 big PIs. They always talk about explosive plays. They count from the Eagles standpoint. When you get those big chunk plays on PIs, they take advantage of the weakness of the other team. To me, that defines good coaching. So I give a lot of credit to the coaching staff as well. Just a dominant performance. The offense is just, it's so difficult to stop because they can do everything. They can do everything. AJ Brown is ridiculously good. I graded him as the second best player coming into the season when I did my top 25. I may have undersold him, except that Dallas Goedert is that good as well at tight end. He's an amazing player. I saw a personnel guy on Twitter say he's the best player in football, Dallas Goedert. That's what he said. I'm not going that far, but that's how good he is at his position. His position isn't as important as a lot of other positions, let's be honest. But, Devontae Smith has that game. He's the second wide receiver on this team. Then you have the +1 impact of Jalen Hurts in the running game. It's so well-rounded. And look, it's still early. It's still a short sample size. You can only play who's in front of you. Everybody's talking about Jonathan Gannon, whether it's good or bad. You better start talking about Shane Steichen, because he's not going to be here if they keep playing like this.
That's a very good point. And I was going to hold off on this point, but because you went the direction that you went, I feel the need to follow up. As good as the Eagles' offense is, and you just ran it down for us, arguably the best offensive line, a tight end who some people are calling the best player in football, the perfect wide receiver in A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Yeah, where are the doubters? Where are those who I had to fend off when the Eagles moved up to? He's 165 pounds, sopping wet with a rock in his pocket. How can you expect him to play in the National Football League with that frame? Well, Skinny Batman came out yesterday and showed everyone why he is one of the best players in the National Football League and will be for years to come. Where are all those doubters today? They're in hiding. Jalen Hurts, not only throwing the ball, throwing it with accuracy, throwing it down the field, throwing it short, making all the throws, all the plays. How did they not score any points in the second half?
Yeah, I mean, I think they took the foot off the gas again. Nick Sirianni says they didn't. He took, blame for that against Minnesota. He said he felt they stayed aggressive. Look, I don't think they did, but even if they did, a lot of it's human nature. The game's over. You're trying to get the heck out of there with no injuries. You're not threatened. And there is a human nature aspect to that. People can say, well, you got to keep going. You got to keep going. I mean, if you won, you won. And you just start to relax a little bit. It is the definition of human nature. I think that's what happens. So, I mean, yeah, you could nitpick at it. I think if they were threatened, similar, I said the same thing against Minnesota. I saw no evidence that if they were going to be threatened. And I think if Minnesota cashed in on the blocked field goal, or Herb Smith didn't drop that pass, or, they took advantage of the interception. If any of those things would have happened, I think the Eagles would have turned it back on and just went right down the field and scored, or, maybe not immediately, but certainly in the game. Same thing here. I think if they were threatened at any point, they would have handled their business. Can't prove it, but that's the feel I get in the game. They're not threatened. That's why I'm not concerned. I think it's more human nature than anything else, because when they're going at it full blast, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, unbelievable dominance that they've had all 3 games in the second quarter. That seems to be their quarter, because they always win a flip and get deferral in the first quarter. So they don't score as many points in the first quarter as they do in the second. They're the most dominant second quarter team in the National Football League, but they do have to be able to put points on the board all 4 quarters. It hasn't been necessary here in the first 3 games, and we'll find at some point, they're not going to run wire to wire in every single game they play this year and go 17-0 in the regular season. So at some point, we'll find out if they're capable of doing it, or if there really truly is an issue. But I do want to tackle the issue that you kind of touched on for a second there, and that's the fact that the Eagles got 9 sacks. 9, count them, 9. 8 of which came from the defensive line. Your guy, TJ Edwards, got the other one, but a couple of shared sacks in there. They were just stone cold dominant. And you're right, they took advantage of a weakened Commanders offensive line, but a lot of it had to do with Carson Wentz. For those who were Carson Wentz fans and felt he never should have been moved on from, and that he was the guy because they made a contract commitment to him, that they should have kept the commitment they had. No, they needed to give up the commitment because Carson gave up the commitment to the Eagles, and he's the same old quarterback we remember from 2020.
Yeah.
He holds on to the football and just waits and waits and waits. And he's not playing. He's got to know that. John McMullen knew it. Jordan McDonald knew it. The Philadelphia Eagle defensive line knew it. Carson, your offensive line wasn't very good. And after you get sacked, I don't know, the second time, the third time, the fourth time, or the 5th time, maybe it should dawn on you that you got to get the football out of there. The offensive coordinator of the Redskins, what the hell are you doing continuing to call 7-step drops? The Eagles are having a picnic back there in your backyard. Everybody meet up at Carson Wentz and take him to the ground. And they just kept calling the same play. Are they that limited that they can't adjust during the game and going, oh my God, we're getting crushed back here. I think we should do something else? What the heck was Washington thinking?
Yeah. They're not limited. I think, the best play of Washington's probably offense was the first offensive play of the game. They did sort of the end around to Curtis Samuel, who's a really dynamic player and is back and healthy, and they got 15 yards, and then it all went downhill from there. They have Terry McLaurin, who they didn't get the football to until, there was 30 minutes of garbage time. This is a perfect example of why I'm not a stat guy when it comes to the NFL. I talk about this all the time with you, Jody. I'm a stat guy in baseball. Large sample sizes. I think everything turns out the way it should for the most part in baseball. It's a very analytic, very stats-based game. Football, you only play 17 games in the and then so the sample size as a whole is very small. Because of the unbalanced schedule, because there's 32 teams and everybody doesn't play everybody, that factors into it. But even more so, the context of the game factors in it. Like those last 30 minutes, I don't give a flying what. I mean, the Commanders had 50 yards, I think, at halftime. So I look at that first half stats and I go, that's where the game is won. That's the important part. And that's where the Eagles dominated. And then Carson, he did the same thing against, I think, Detroit. He had a terrible start. They got way behind. And then he put up some numbers in garbage time. And then they made it look a little bit better in that game than this game. But, first half, all right, Carson, 3 of 10, 24 yards, 39.6 passer rating. That's where the game was won and lost. So I don't care about the final box score. They dominated the Washington Commanders when it mattered. And from their standpoint, 322, Jody, 322 to 50. They had 322 offensive yards in the first half. That's complete domination. And you can throw the second half in the trash because I don't care at that point. Human nature takes over. 30 minutes of extended garbage time.
It was extended tiempo de garbage for the Eagles in their victory over the Washington Commanders yesterday. All right, we've still got an hour and 40 minutes to chop up the Eagles win and 3-0 start. Only they and the Dolphins at 3-0, 3 weeks into the season. I'd say they're in a good position. But look who's coming to town, Dougie P. No, we got all week to talk about that. So we'll put Dougie P on the side. We want to bask in the glow of the domination yesterday. We're going to have assistance. Up next is our buddy Tommy Lawlor from Eagles Blitz. That's IGGLES, eaglesblitz.com. It's been following the Eagles for years. I'm guessing yesterday put a smile on his face because he goes back to the Buddy Ryan defensive line dominating days, and that's what it looked like yesterday for the Birds. So Tommy Lawlor from eaglesblitz.com, our first guest. He's up next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Welcome to Pondley Hockey. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pondley Hockey a call.
You got your Mac guys here on Birds 365, McMullen and McDonald, after a jarring Eagles win yesterday. Joining us to help break it down is one of our buds who has been following the Eagles for years. His website, eaglesblitz.com, is a must-check out for all Eagle fans. Tommy Lawlor jumps aboard with us here on Birds 365. How are you this morning, Tommy?
Doing well after yesterday, that's for sure. How are you guys doing?
We're
Doing
great.
well, Tommy.
Appreciate your hopping on board. Yesterday afternoon, 9 Eagle sacks. Brandon Graham with 2.5, Fletcher Cox, Reddick, 1.5 apiece. I believe Mike Pitts and Mike Golick and Clyde Simmons had 1 apiece yesterday as well. Give you any memories walk down memory lane with the fact that was as dominating an Eagles defensive line performance as we've seen in maybe a couple decades?
Yeah, I mean, the classic one was back in '91 when they had 11 sacks of Troy Aikman and shut out Dallas. So it wasn't quite at that level, but it was pretty darn close. And the thing you love, there was the 9 sacks, but according to the NFL game book, they had 17 hits.
17, yeah.
And
17.
they muddied the pocket. So Carson Wentz always had people around him, even when he threw the ball. He had pressure, and Fletcher and Javon did a great job of pushing the pocket so that Reddick and Josh Sweat coming off the edge could disrupt him and affect him. And the times that the guys in the middle got loose, they got home, and it was a lot of fun. And the fact it was Wentz that they had their big sack day against, that made it all the more sweet.
Yeah, and don't forget BG, Tommy. It didn't play
course.
that much, but 2.5 sacks. So everybody, that's the thing with Brandon. He's been such a great player, but never been a big sack guy. So Philadelphia loves sacks. They got their sacks. Now, I got to be a little bit of a dampener because everybody's too excited. It was a bad offensive line. They're playing a backup center, Sam Cosme. The first 2 games, they played really good tackles. They played poor tackles. Charles Leno's okay, but Cosme had a really difficult game. It was generally 4-man pressure. So, I don't know if that can correlate for the rest of the season. Do you think from that standpoint, it's like, oh, see, we can get home with 4, and that's going to down the road be a little bit of an issue?
Well, listen, they did play a bad offensive line, but that's what you're supposed to do when you play a bad offensive line is get to the quarterback. So they did their job. And when they played a really good offensive line in Detroit in week 1, the pressure wasn't nearly the same. And that's just reality. The Eagles have a good defensive line. They do not have a great defensive line. This is not Reggie and Clyde and those guys. They could get pressure on just about anybody. And that's the difference between a good and a great line. This is a good line. There's no foundational player that is so dominant. You look at the way that Aaron Donald is for the Rams, or Von Miller's been exceptional for Buffalo. Those guys come in and you got to have a game plan to stop them, and they still can get through and make plays. The Eagles don't have that guy right now. They've got a bunch of good players that in the right matchups can win, but they don't have that great player. So, yesterday, it doesn't mean they're going to have 9 sacks every time they face a bad offensive line. First of all, they did a quarterback to hold the ball way too long a lot. But the fact that they affected him and got him off his spot and really give him a hard time. And last week, they'd had a bunch of sacks too. But instead, Kirk Cousins decided he was going to throw off his back foot and hope for best. And
that was
throwing
bizarre.
a ball to Darius Slay for interception. So, in a way, having Cousins did the Eagles a favor in not taking sacks and putting the ball over grabs.
Yeah.
Pick your poison. And
right.
Thank you for going there, because that's exactly where I wanted to go next, because we haven't mentioned a portion of the Eagles team 25 minutes in, and that's a secondary. Big part of getting sacks is the fact that your guys on the outside and or deep don't allow the opposition to get open. And the Eagles were playing great coverage throughout the entire game, as a matter of fact. And Washington's got a pretty good core of wide receivers. It wasn't like they were playing a bunch of schlubs. We point out that the Washington offensive line might not be all that good. Oh, the Washington receivers are, and none of them can get open because the Eagles secondary did a dynamite job yesterday, Tommy.
They really did. And I'm not going to lie to you. I thought they would give the Eagles a really hard time. Because the thing is, like last week, the Eagles were able to look at Justin Jefferson and say, we're going to shut him down. We'll deal with Adam Thielen, and we don't fear any of the other pass catchers. Well, against Washington, you've got Curtis Samuel, who's the workhorse underneath receiver. Then you've got McLaurin, who can get deep. Jahan Dotson's been a fantastic rookie. He looks really good. So how do you plan your coverage for that? And, it was going to have to be a real team effort, and it was, and the Eagles did an excellent job. Wentz isn't holding the ball for no reason. You're exactly right. He's holding the ball because his guys aren't open. And so that's where you've heard coaches talk about it for years, that part of sacks is not just on the D line, it's on the DBs covering well. So it gives the line time to get home. And that happened yesterday. You saw they really plastered it and did a good job. And Avonte Maddox and Darius Slay are playing exceptional football right now. And James Bradbury seems to make a crucial pass breakup every week. So that secondary is really, it's been lights out so far.
So how much credit are we giving Jonathan Gannon this week? Because the game plan was sound. I mean, they came in, they thought they could get home with 4. It was correct. They wanted to take away the first read from Carson Wentz. They were able to do it. He held on to the football, as you mentioned. The more impressive number to me than the 9 is the 17 you mentioned, Tommy, because even if you have a quarterback who's going to get the football out, those 17 pressures still exist. So how much credit do you give JG for the game plan this week?
Well, I think we have to give him a lot of credit because we've also given him a lot of flack when things don't go right. Yeah. You know, it's only fair if you're going to be hard on the guy when they give up 35 to the Lions. You got to give him some credit when things are right. And sometimes a simple game plan is the right game plan. You know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Monty Kiffin was a brilliant defensive coordinator, and he ran some somewhat simplistic defenses, a lot of cover
very
two,
simple.
But he got his guys to execute at a high level. They stayed motivated. They made adjustments here and there, depending on who they were playing, and they performed at a high level. So you don't always have to have a. I remember Seth Joyner one time saying something about Bud Carson having a game plan. It was like 20 or 30 pages. Not everything has to be like this unbelievably complex, this crazy scheme. Sometimes just let your guys go get it and focus on the little things is the right thing. And the Eagles defense last year struggled in completion percentage, sacks, passer rating, all those numbers. And right now they're top 5. They lead the league in sacks. They're second in opposing quarterback rating, and they're 5th in completion percentage. So all the things we were critical of them for last year, they're getting the job done this year, and they faced talented quarterbacks, not Brady and Rodgers, but they have faced talented quarterbacks.
They have, and they've kept those quarterbacks in check, and they really checked out on Carson yesterday. All right, Tommy, let's flip it over to the other side of the ball, where the Eagles' offense has been as dominating as their defense, at least for first half of games. And John says, human nature, they take their foot off the gas. Probably right. But the show that they put on yesterday in the second quarter was as good as maybe any Eagle offense I've ever seen. Jalen Hurts, who came into the year as a question mark, everybody knew he was a question mark. I know it's only 3 games, but you talk about having definitively answered a question. Man, does he look good. Where has this come from? I've been beating the drum all off season that you can improve. People, your accuracy is your accuracy, your arm strength, your arm strength. His arm strength is fine, and his accuracy is off the charts good. Where has all this come from?
Well, he's playing at a much higher level, and you and I, the three of us, talked a couple of months ago during the offseason about whether it improve, and the thing I told you is I said it's almost impossible for him not to improve because he's got better weapons. He's got year 2 in the system. He's got stability. He really has a year of experience being an NFL quarterback, so he understands that. And then he was able to go away from the offseason and study his faults and look at his mechanics and really focus on them. So he's had all these issues to work on. He's been able to work on them. He's got the right people around him. He's got the right coaches around him. His guys are making plays, and you're seeing, what he can do when he's got a favorable situation. And Jalen's always been a talented quarterback. He's just not like one of those guys, especially. I happen to be watching parts of the Miami Buffalo games today. Josh Allen, they only scored 19 points. They lost the game, but Josh Allen made a few plays where your jaw just hits the floor. And Jalen Hurts just isn't that. He just, some of the things Josh Allen does are just freakish. But Jalen Hurts is a talented quarterback with a lot of potential, and he's worked hard. And you hear Sirianni talk about all the time. Give me guys that are high character driven, and they'll maximize their talent. And that's what I think we're seeing with Jalen Hurts. He maybe not is in that category of Mahomes and Rodgers and guys like Josh Allen that are freaks, but you're going to see him get everything he can out of the talent he's got. And he's off to a great start in 2022.
Yeah, one of the things that bothered me about that playoff game last year, Tommy, was everybody looking at Josh Allen, not just the Eagles and Patrick Mahomes, and going back and forth, and they're saying, "Oh, we don't have that. We need that." Like it's a consistent week-to-week thing, even with those players. I agree with everything you're saying, and that they have that top-tier talent that people can't reach. Most quarterbacks, and that's not a criticism of Jalen Hurts. Very few quarterbacks can reach that level, but it's not consistent over 17 weeks. There's a lot of ways you can win a football game. You mentioned Buffalo. I don't know how many times did Josh Allen throw it yesterday? 60 something, and they lost. And they lost the football game. And you can't reach Josh Allen's level. I'm agreeing with that. And so I don't understand this relentless pursuit of what I consider a ghost. I mean, they exist, but they're very rare. And you can't necessarily get that play. Right now, the Eagles are a Super Bowl contender. If you go to Tankathon, they're going to have the 17th pick in the draft. Now, unfortunately, we're 7th pick. Unfortunately, we're only through 3 weeks. But I'm going to say it right here, and we're always taping, so clip this. I'm extending Jalen Hurts as soon as I can. The odds, they can't do it until after the season. They're going to have to start over. I don't care if it's Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. And by the way, they're not going to be in a position to get that guy, even with the 7th pick. You're going to have to start over, even guys of that talent. You have a young quarterback who hasn't hit the prime of his career. He's got this amazing work ethic. He does everything to maximize what he has. Why am I pulling the plug on that? I'm going forward with that. Oh, we muted. Are you getting Tommy?
No, not hearing Tommy.
We lost your audio, Tommy. Tone, could you try to get Tommy? I wanted to hear his thoughts on that. But yeah, that's where I am.
I so wholeheartedly agree with you. Tommy, we got you again? No, we've got some kind of issue with Tommy's microphone. We'll see if we can figure that out. You're right. And oh, by the way, he could be better or worse next week, Jalen Hurts, week after week.
Oh,
it's irrelevant. You can't do anything till after the season's over and done with. Behind closed doors, Howie Roseman is talking to Jeffrey Lurie and Nick Sirianni, or whatever. Oh, and they're heavily leaning in that direction, but they can't do anything. So you need to let this season play itself out.
Yeah, you have
before anything can be done.
Can you hear me now, guys?
Tommy. Yeah, we got you.
So what I was going to say is, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, John. The one thing I'll tell you, we still have a couple more tests for Jalen to pass. He's got to. We need to see him play against an elite type defense and see how it is, because you saw him struggle the first part of the Detroit game when they were playing a lot of man coverage and the pass rush was affecting him. You saw him struggle early a little bit yesterday when he looked out of sync. And again, you had a team that was playing an aggressive defense and getting some pressure. And now he obviously righted the ship both games and looked sensational, but you saw hints of it. What is he going to do if he plays against, Tampa Bay's defense, right? And that's that's a test. The other test is to see what happens when the Eagles have one of those screw up games where, he fumbles or Miles Sanders fumbles, they give up a kickoff return, and all of a sudden they find themselves down 17-0 or 21-3. And can he rally? And we saw him last year play well in some blowouts, but they were like epic blowouts, and they were like, we're talking about garbage time with Wentz. He had some garbage time yards against Dallas and Kansas City early on last year. What we want to see is if the team falls down by a couple of touchdowns, can he rally them and bring them on a comeback into the game? So,
and real quick,
those
Tommy,
are a couple of tests.
Yeah, just to follow up, I agree with everything you're saying. There's going to be hiccups. There's going to be bad games. There's going to be ugly games at some point. I don't know when, but they're coming. That happens to everybody in the NFL. I'm baking that in with my thought process. Like, I don't want to start over. I have A.J. Brown. I have Devontae Smith. Even if I get the best rookie quarterback, I'm taking a step back. I think the championship window is open.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying. And listen, if if you watch the debacle last night, you can't help but sit there and watch Russell Wilson play
Yeah.
and think, is it a good thing the Eagles didn't get him? He made it clear he did not want to come to Philadelphia. They did give him up a lot, a couple first round picks to get him. He'd have come in, he'd have had a much more functional coaching situation here. Denver's a mess, right? So some of that's not on Russell Wilson. They struggle to get plays called, and I feel bad for Russell in that standpoint. But you see that it's not automatic that you go get a quarterback you bring into your system and he's going to perform at the same level. Circumstances matter, and you're right. Look, Jared Goff was the number 1 pick in 2016. Carson Wentz was number 2. They're both on their second team. And both of them have had disappointing careers to this point. So getting Young or Stroud in the upcoming draft, if the Eagles magically had the number 1 pick, no guarantee that guy's going to be better than Hurts. So, Hurts is a good player. The question is, can he become a great player? We're all looking for great players. If you go back to Bill Walsh, even when Joe Montana was his quarterback, he was looking around at other quarterbacks thinking, well, when John Elway came out, he looked into potentially trying to trade for John Elway. Late in the career, he looked into trying to trade for Jim Everett when he was coming into the draft. We all see the guy that's 6'4", 6'5", big, strong arm, mobile, and you go, what if he had that?
Yeah.
I've done well
I
with Joe
say
Montana,
with Trevor
but what if I had
Lawrence,
that?
It's Doug Peterson week, so I'm going to say with Trevor. Trevor, has that different ceiling. But man, Jalen's got all the intangibles, works hard. I can't help correlate between 2016 and 2017. Carson Wentz went out and worked with Tom House and company. I don't think it was a coincidence that he had his best season. His mechanics were better. And then he kind of fell off again. He didn't go back. Jalen did the same thing this year. His mechanics are better. His accuracy are better. I guarantee you he's going back next year. That's just the guy he is.
I totally agree with that. And that's what I love about him. And Les Bowen wrote a piece this morning talking about Carson after the game saying, well, I need to hold on to the ball. And Les said that's the 8,729th time he said that.
Yeah.
Carson is a talented player and hardworking and tough, but the mistakes he's repeated year after year, they don't get addressed. He says it to the media, I'm going to work on it. And then it's the same mistake the next week. And
Tommy, you mentioned
it
it was a good thing you mentioned it was a good thing they didn't get Russell Wilson. How did Deshaun Watson play yesterday? Oh, that's right. He's not playing. The Eagles made an attempt to get their hands on him too. Maybe the thing that I like most about Jalen Hurts, and this is probably a fault of mine, I listen to the naysayers too much. And it annoys me when I think the naysayers are wrong and then they're proven wrong. Oh, Jalen Hurts runs too much. After the Detroit game, okay, he made some plays, but he's running all over the place. It can't be sustained. You can't play quarterback like that in the National Football League. How did he do yesterday? He didn't have to take off. There was no pressure in the pocket. He had all the time that he needed, and he had wide receivers who were getting open, and he delivered them the football. So it wasn't, Jalen loves to run. Jalen lives to run. He can't do anything but run. No. If he has to stay in the pocket, he'll stay in the pocket. He'll pick you apart that way and throw for 300 yards. Those who are saying Jalen Hurts will never be a top-flight quarterback because he's always dying to run, no, he's not. He only runs when he needs to run. Every once in a while, I think Steichen gets a little heavy-handed with the designed runs and the RPOs, but I don't think I think Jalen Hurts is perfectly fine and happy being a pocket quarterback. How about you?
I think there's a little truth on both sides there. I think it's his instinct to run because it's what he's done his whole life. In college, and go back to high school, how did anybody ever tackle that dude, right? And then in college, you looked at the running numbers he put up at Alabama and Oklahoma. They were just fantastic. I mean, he could make plays with his legs. Now, at Oklahoma, he became an effective passer and put up some good numbers. A lot of that was schematic due to Lincoln Riley and the fact that guy is just a freaking genius. And as Jalen's come to the NFL, I think it still sometimes is his instinct when there's a little bit of pressure to take off. But I think he and the coaches have worked to say, trust the pocket and get the ball to your guys. And last year, he didn't have the guys to get it to. Jalen Reagor, obviously, we know he had issues. Quez Watkins, young guy learning things. And then Devontae was a rookie. This year he's got Devontae in year 2. He's got AJ as an absolute workhorse stud of a receiver. And then you've got Zach Pascal as a role player, Quez Watkins as a role player, Dallas Goedert is one of the best tight ends in football. So this year he can really get the ball to his guys. So I think he understands there's real value in staying in the pocket. And I think he and the coaches are working on that. And again, when I say it's his instinct, that's not an insult to him. When you were the best player in high school and college and taking off and running led to big plays and championships, how could you not bring some of that to the NFL? So now he's learning, hey, if I get the ball to those guys and they make plays, the whole team is better. And that's where we're really going to win games and have sustained success.
Tommy, bring up those weapons, and you've been covering this team for a long time. So I want to get your thoughts on this when I say this. They've only been together for 3 games, so obviously not from a production standpoint. But has this franchise ever had a more talented trio than A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert? I don't think they have.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, if you went back to, was there a time when Fred Barnett, Chris Carter, and Keith Jackson were all 3 playing at a high level? Their careers kind of went up and down because Carter was out of here at a certain point. That's the only group that I could think of that would compare. When you look at Deshaun and Jeremy Maclin and Selleck, but Selleck was more of a complimentary receiver. Dallas is a weapon.
Yeah.
You watch that tight end screen yesterday. You get the ball to him, he makes the one guy miss, and he's gone.
Yeah.
And Brent Selleck,
what patience, by the way.
He never did that.
Yeah, you never see a tight end who can block like Dallas Goedert, and then he's got the football IQ to let the blocking set up for him on a tight end screen. He is an amazing player. Dallas.
He really is. He's become. Listen, Kittle and Kelsey are elite tight ends. Waller's an elite tight end. To me, Goddard's right up in that next level or pushing him because he's a great blocker. He's a better blocker than those guys.
Oh yeah,
and he's got great hands, and then he is as good a receiver after the catch as any tight end I've seen in a while. So he has become an absolute weapon for the Eagles, and quarterbacks love tight ends. So that's another thing, that the relationship with him and Hurts is good because they can design all those little RPOs and screens, little simple ways to get the ball to Goddard, and Goddard makes a play because he's got a mismatch on a linebacker who just can't run with him. So that gives Hurts a really intriguing weapon right there.
Tommy, since we have you, we might as well take a peek with you next week to the upcoming game. Can the Eagles get to 4-0? The Jacksonville Jaguars come to town. I was on CBS Sports Radio yesterday with Zach Gelb at the end of Ion Football, and he was almost making excuses for the Charger defense, that their offense was so bad because Herbert shouldn't have been out there on the field playing in pain, wincing as he's throwing, that is the reason why the Jags were able to go up and down the field against the Charger defense.
Come on, Zach.
That's what I said. Come on. Are you really? You're going to go there? You're going to give their defense a pass because Justin Herbert is playing hurt? No, the Jags carved them up. Trevor Lawrence was throwing the ball all over the lot. You talk about a guy coming of age. We think Jalen's coming of age. Oh, so is Trevor Lawrence under Doug Peterson's tutelage down there in Jacksonville. They're gonna come in here and challenge this football team. We saw what the Eagles did in a return game against Carson Wentz. What's it going to be like next week when Doug Peterson brings his Jaguars into town against the Eagles?
It's going to be a tough test, and we've talked about Jalen needing to face a good defense. Well, the Jaguars have a loaded defense, and that's going to be his first real tough test of the year. That front seven of theirs is absolutely loaded, and Doug has you see the value in a real NFL coach when you get Urban Meyer out of there, Doug Peterson in, and he knows how to build relationships and bonds with players, and he knows how to coach quarterbacks. And Jacksonville had talent. They just didn't have structure and culture, and he's given them both. And that's a good team. It feels weird to say it, but that's a good team. So
I think we froze up Tommy again, so we'll see if we can bring him back. But he's right, Jody, with Jacksonville. That was the easiest prediction I can make, is that Doug Peterson would be so well liked because he's so much better than the other guy. And it's turned out that way. And he is. People forget when Doug first got here. I mean, they called it the quarterback incubator when he was here with Frank Reich and John DiPilippo. They did a phenomenal job early on with Carson Wentz. Obviously, it went in a different direction, but he's great with young quarterbacks. And you see it with Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence is, boy, that guy's talented.
Absolutely. Well, you know, he had success in helping to develop Mahomes in Kansas City. And then obviously they've done great things with they did good things with Carson Wentz in Philadelphia, and now he's doing them with Trevor Lawrence. So he knows how to speak their language. He knows what they're going through. You know, he was there with Favre when Favre was a young quarterback years ago, 30 years ago, I guess. And so he's seen development as a player, as an assistant coach, as a head coach. He takes all that experience and he's able to use that to develop Lawrence. So Trevor should be very happy that Jacksonville hired the right guy. And it's going to be interesting to see if that team, which has they haven't sustained success since going back to the Tom Coughlin era. It'll be interesting to see if they can do it.
Tommy, great stuff. We appreciate you jumping in for 20 minutes with us here today. We're certainly going to get you back on after we get to another couple of games. Thanks for joining us today. We'll talk again soon.
Sounds good, fellas. Y'all have a great week.
Check out his website, Eagles Blitz. That's IGGLES Blitz.com. Tommy's been following the Eagles forever, gave us a good kind of out of town. Tommy lives outside of Philadelphia, but he stays on top of everything Eagles. And I do check out his website on a regular basis. You should as well. All right. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Hour number 2, we're going to get our bud, Chris Franklin from NJ.com, who was down there in the end zone with John McMullen yesterday at X Field, watching the Eagles take apart the Commanders. Mac and I have a couple more things we got to break down before Mr. Franklin joins us here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Welcome to Pondley Hockey. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pondley Hockey a call.
got your Mag and Mag guys here on Birds 365, a victorious Monday after the Eagles dismissed their third opponent of the year. Yesterday, it was the Commanders down in Washington, 28-8, and it really 24-8, excuse me, and it wasn't nearly as competitive as the score looks, as Johnny gave us in the first hour. It was over at half. What happened in the second half will go into the record books, but did it really have an outcome on the game? Not really. The game had already been decided. So, yeah, I'm going to mention it this week leading up to the game against the Jaguars. It'd be nice if they scored some second half points. They've only got 14. Some fourth quarter points. They have none in 3 games. But it really hasn't been necessary. So until it becomes a game that sits in the balance in the fourth quarter and they don't get any points and they end up on the short end of a score, it's something that we'll wait on getting overly critical about. Here's one thing that I want to be critical about. I want to critique critiques, because one of the knocks on Jalen Hurts coming into the season, those who thought the Eagles should have got out and gotten Russell Wilson and or
by the way, the Eagles thought that. Let's not be revisionist historians. People blame us, blame the media. We didn't make that stuff out of whole cloth. That was your Philadelphia Eagles, so they can act like, oh, we knew. They didn't know.
They did seriously inquire about 2 other quarterbacks during this offseason. But Jalen Hurts has answered all the critics. I won't call the Eagles a critic. I'll just call them a keeping all options open group. Well, again, one of the knocks on Jalen Hurts was that he doesn't get the ball out quickly enough, that he too holds on to it too long. Well, you saw in stark contrast yesterday a quarterback who gets the ball out quickly enough and a quarterback who holds on to the ball too long. And that was Jalen Hurts getting it out as quickly as he did, and Carson Wentz holding and going down. I thought that criticism was always somewhat overstated, John. I thought a more legit criticism was that he would take off too quickly, that he would feel the rush in his first, as Tommy, I thought Tommy did a great job pointing it out and explaining it. That's what he had done his entire life. He was so much better than other athletes, even in the SEC and the Big 12. When in doubt, pull it down, make 20. Why not? Why wouldn't you do something like that?
Yeah.
Because it's more difficult in the NFL. And, oh, by the way, they hit harder in the NFL, and you can end up being injured more in the NFL. So you needed to curb that. You needed to see Jalen become a combination player, quarterback in the pocket first, running quarterback second. Sometimes it's certainly his first year when he took over for Carson, and at times last year I thought he was a little too quick to take off and make a play with his legs. Didn't do it at all yesterday, because why? The plays were there. The wide receivers were open. The blocking was there. Johnny Mack, he didn't even have to think about running, because all he had to do was sit there and pick apart the Washington defense.
No, well, yeah, I mean, and that was the strength of the Washington defense as well. When they did have the few designed run, and they didn't run the football well, but who cares? I mean, that's the strength of Washington, that interior defensive line, and they were able to utilize the passing game. I think more when people said that Jalen Hurts held on to the football too much, I think it was more about getting the football out late. When he was throwing the football, which I think is fair, but sometimes he didn't trust what he saw, as coaches would say, and hesitate a little bit. And once you hesitate, that window closes really quickly at the NFL level. He's a great deep thrower. And sometimes last year he would get the ball out a little bit late on those plays, and that disrupts the timing. Yesterday, he had A.J. Brown open for a touchdown. He was late. One of the rare poor. He was just late getting the football out. So there's still he's already improved drastically, and there's still more improvement. And that's why I was talking with Tommy. It's not that he's not going to have hiccups. Every quarterback has hiccups. The best quarterbacks of all time have hiccups and bad games, and there's going to be some adversity, but I don't want to start over. This guy's already developed to the point you're starting over. No matter how talented the next quarterback would be. You're starting over as an offense, and this offense looks pretty good to me. And yeah, he's still gonna, but he's gonna get better, and he's already gotten better, and he's starting to trust himself more. He's starting to trust the offense more, and that should only improve going forward. There's no reason. I say this all the time. It's my pet peeve with the Sixers in the Sam Hinkie era. And you've heard me say it numerous times. Player development is real. You don't just draft a good player or a bad player. Situations matter. It's the job of the coaching staff to get everything they can out of a particular player. Some bad coaching staffs do a bad job with that. Some staffs do a great job with that. I often wonder if the Eagles made a different decision in 1999 and took one of those other quarterbacks, whether it was Tim Couch or Achilles Smith, and they got with Andy Reid, and poor Donovan McNabb had to go to their crappy situations, how that would have changed NFL sort of lore and Philadelphia lore. Player development matters. It really, really does.
And it's funny because I had no idea you're going back to 99.
Wow.
The quarterback that I wanted in that draft, Johnny Mac, was none of the top three. I actually like Culpepper better than any of them.
Dante, I covered Dante. Dante was a great, people forget. He had one of the best years ever. I'll pull it up. And I mean, he was the NFL Offensive Player of the Year. Then he had a horrific knee injury, and that kind of went things in a negative direction for him. But there was a short frame where he was completely dominant. And yeah, throw Dante in that mix as well, because if Andy Reid got him, probably would have been even better. And there is people think, and I say it all the time with Jefferson or Metcalf, people just think you're going to take that player, pluck him in this offense, and he's going to be the same player. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that.
Culpepper was Central Florida, right? UCF?
Yeah.
I remember. You might recognize the name because you've been doing this for a long time too. I used to have a guy come on my shows back in the 90s. Dave T. Thomas was one of the forerunners. One of the forerunners of the draft, which has now become a cottage industry unto itself. But I used to have Dave T. on my show all the time. And he gave me a call, end of September, first weekend of October. I said, I reached out to him. He called me back. I said, you want to do the earliest of early draft spots, whatever? He said, yeah. He said, I was at a game this weekend. I saw the best quarterback arm in the country this year. I said, oh, so you were at Tennessee, Peyton Manning. He said, no, I wasn't at Tennessee. I said, well, and you didn't see the best arm in college football. He said, yeah, I did. This kid, Dante Culpepper from Central Florida. And I had heard the name, but I had never watched him play. I wasn't watching Central Florida on a Saturday. If all the college football action is on, I'm not getting around to Central Florida. I had never seen him play. I said, so you're telling me I got to check out this guy, Dante Culpepper? Yeah, you better, because he's got the best arm in college football. So I did. I started watching him. So I talked him up a blue streak leading up to that draft. He ended up being a first-round pick. After those top three, it was the best draft. Peyton didn't come out till Peyton came out the year before, I guess it was. Yeah. So it was a little bit different, but I took Dave's advice on Culpepper, and man, he was a talented football player. You're right. When he hurt his knee, he just wasn't the same football player. He wasn't Hurts-like, but he could make plays with his legs too. That was
great.
Sort of
the great runner. Yeah.
The coming out party of quarterbacks who could both throw it and run with it. Donovan, Achilles Smith could do it, and Culpepper were all those type of quarterbacks who could both beat you from the pocket and beat you with their legs.
Jody, I remember the first time I saw Dante Culpepper on a practice field. I think it was 99, maybe. I think that was the year.
It was the 99 draft?
Yeah, 99. Yeah. I was just talking about it. Yeah, 99. I saw him on the practice. I said, this guy's a stinking quarterback. He's 6'4", 260.
He's big.
bigger than some of the defensive linemen Minnesota had at the time. I mean, and he was an amazing athlete, but 2004 was the season. He completed 70% of his passes, 4,700 yards, 39 touchdowns. It was absurd. It was absurd the year he had. And he was the offensive player of the year. Next year, he tore his knee up really bad, and he was never the same. But by his second year, he had 33 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. He was, at that time, for that short frame, he was better than Donovan McNabb, who was a phenomenal, and that's not an insult to Donovan at all. But yeah, I wonder if Andy got him, how good he would have been. Because Andy's, in my personal opinion, is the best coach ever when it comes to developing quarterbacks. At least in my era. I'm not going back, but in my era, nobody has done it better than Andy Reid. So, but getting back to Jalen Hurts, and I want to give credit to Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen, because I was thinking about this because it's Doug Peterson week. And I've had the opportunity over, since Doug got here in 2016 to watch the 2 best rookie coaches of their particular classes up close every day and see them learn and get better as coaches. Nick Sirianni's so much better than everybody else in his class. I'm sorry, he is. People could throw out brand and say, no, Doug Peterson, same thing. So much better than everybody else in his coaching class. All rookie coaches, you see it with Nathaniel Hackett. Everybody's dumping on him. Rightfully so. Don't get me wrong. That was a bad hire for this reason. They hired him to get Aaron Rodgers. He was sort of Aaron Rodgers bait. They didn't get Aaron Rodgers, and then they're stuck with a coach they didn't hire him for the right reasons. But, everybody makes mistakes. But you got to learn. Same thing with players. Same thing with you. You got to learn from your mistakes. That's what Doug was able to do. That's what Nick's able to do. Philadelphia's been very lucky when it comes to the past 2 head coaches and what could have happened and what the Eagles wanted to happen and what did happen, because neither was the first choice. And things worked out very, very well.
We're giving credit to the Eagles for their 24-8 win over the Commanders yesterday. A lot of emphasis on the game that Jalen Hurts, with his talented wide receiving and tight end core, put up a ton of yards, 300 plus yards in the first half. That's off the charts good. But we do have to continue to come back to the defense, because the defense was just dominant yesterday. And the stat that jumps off the page is 9 sacks. 9 sacks. I remember the game that Tommy referenced, the 11-sack game against Troy Aikman. There was a great fit. I'm sure that it's someplace, somewhere, saved somewhere. It was Troy Aikman's rookie season. And there was a shot of him on the sidelines. He's got his helmet off, and there is just a dribble of blood coming down his chin. And he's staring off into the netherworld. And he just looked like a guy who said, what the hell did I get myself into? He was the number 1 pick in the draft. He went on to win all those Super Bowls. Yeah. But this was before any of that happened. And Eagles sacked him 11 times. And he was just a beaten man. It was just ugly what they did to him that day. And I remember, I'll never forget the sight of Aikman. They had a close shot in his face. You could see the blood coming off him.
I give Troy a lot of credit, because that first year, whatever, the Cowboys, I think they were 1-15. They were.
Oh, and by the way, the one game they won, Steve Walsh.
Yeah.
Aikman didn't play.
Yeah. They were a disaster. And you've seen it with so many quarterbacks over the years that go to bad teams, and they get David Carr is probably the best, really talented player, but he was just besieged every week, never recovered. Aikman was tough enough to recover from that and go on to become the quarterback he became. Really tough guy. Yeah, that's not easy to do when you get besieged like that.
and Carson Wentz was besieged yesterday by the Eagles defensive line. But I think we need to keep coming back to this. We know that Slay had the big game that he had last week and was the defensive player of the week. Not trying to take it away from him. He earned it. He deserved it. Yesterday, Bradbury and Maddox both played phenomenally as well. Maddox had that one great stop down by the goal line. Now it ended up the Eagles got tackled for a safety thereafter. But he kept the Commanders out of the end zone on a 4th down completion to a guy who has a half a foot and 60 pounds on him. Logan Thomas pulled him down at the one. That was a great play by Maddox. But his coverage, Bradbury's coverage, Bradbury doesn't get as much of the limelight as Slay does.
Especially from Bob Groats, who really, I don't know, is taking a dislike to.
We may have to get Groats on again to see if he has the same evaluation that he has.
I think he's a great player. I think.
How many passes have the other team made against him this year?
Not many.
You can remember, John.
Not many.
It just doesn't happen. He doesn't get beat.
You know, I don't understand these people that go back at the all-22 and they say, well, if this happened and this receiver's open and Bradbury's, well, who gives a flying, you know what? Does everybody else do that? I mean, NFL receivers get open. Part of it is cover and rush and cover. As JG always says, you got to have both ends of the spectrum. But I mean, the guy performs. Yeah, he's not the fastest corner in the world. If that were the lone, you know, trait for good corners, there's a bunch of guys who can run in this league and make so many damn mistakes in coverage, like Rashad Wildgoose. Yes. I don't know. I got to look up his 40 time. I don't care what it is. He can run track in the Olympics. Who cares? I mean, the guy knows how to play. He's got a high football IQ. He's a great zone corner. The Eagles play a lot of zone. It's a perfect fit. I don't know what everybody's complaining about.
There's just something wrong about a defensive back being named Wild Goose. I mentioned that yesterday.
Got cooked like a goose.
Doesn't seem to fit. But you're right. You know what it was about Groats? Because it was coming off the first game when we had him. And he had, now you got to be honest here, that really bad missed tackle against Swift, who went for a 50 spot.
I mean, everybody.
That's one play.
Yeah.
One play. All right, he missed the tackle. But other than that, the guy's been phenomenal.
Yeah, and they had 14 missed tackles in that opener. And that had something to do with the fact that, they didn't have one damn live environment in the preseason. They didn't play the starters. So, yeah, I mean, they were a work in progress week one. They missed a bunch of tackles. But, yeah, you got to get over that. I mean, they knew the issue in week one and they corrected it. And they've been, I wouldn't say great, but they've been solid tackling since. So,
yesterday, damn close. I know sacks. We don't think of sacks as tackles, but that's exactly what they are. They're tackles behind the line of scrimmage. It's different than down the field, but you throw 9 sacks into an evaluation afterwards. I would call that a good tackling game. And by the way, they tackled well down the field. Amazing. If you just break down that film, I guarantee you put those two side by side. Eagle tackling week 1, Eagle tackling week 3. There's only 2 weeks in between. Night and day, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, it really is night and day. And you know, that I thought it would be corrected because I thought they knew the issue. And it has been largely corrected. You know, look, people nitpick. I nitpick. You got to nitpick. When things are going so well, you got to point out certain things. So I understand why they do it. You know, one of them is Jordan Davis in playing time. One of them's Nakobe. I got a bunch of Nakobe Dean people saying, why isn't Nakobe getting on the field? I mean, he's not getting, there's nothing wrong with it. He's a rookie. He's not getting on the field when TJ's playing like that and Kaiser White's playing like that. There's nothing wrong with him. He's just a young player who's learning. And he's got the luxury of learning behind two linebackers that are playing at a very high level. There's nothing obscene about that. In fact, it's a nice position to be in, to have a young player getting to learn and instead of being thrown into the fire. But you know, people need to complain.
Johnny, you know how big a how big a fan of Dean I was leading into the draft. Couldn't believe Eagles got him in the 3rd round. I'd love to see him out there playing. Edwards and White aren't letting him on the field. It's that simple.
Yeah.
If they were missing plays, missing assignments, missing tackles, I'd be going, how the hell did they have Nakobe Dean anchored to the bench? What the hell are they thinking? White and Edwards are playing great. They're both playing phenomenally. They're both staying. They're not no reason to take them off the field. So, yeah, Nakobe's going to have to learn to grow slowly. I hope he's playing all the special team snaps, so he is getting some activity. He's just got to wait for his time, because right now the Eagles linebackers shouldn't be taken off the field. They're playing that well.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with it, and there's nothing, it's got nothing to do with Nakobe Dean. He's not doing anything. The other guys are good players, and I've talked about TJ since he's the most underrated player on this team.
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe. So far, I've been right. He's playing at a very high level. Hopefully that continues. You shouldn't hope it doesn't continue. And then hopefully Nakobe Dean can get involved later when you need him down the line. I gotta say this, because our buddy Rob Motti just broke it. Some good news in the NFL. The Pro Bowl is dead, Jody. The Pro Bowl is dead. It is replaced by the Pro Bowl games, taking place in Las Vegas, of course. A week-long celebration of player skills featuring exciting new format, and they're going to have a flag football game at the end. So the Pro Bowl, the worst all-star game in the history of creation, is finally dead. So good for you, NFL.
Good. I agree wholeheartedly. I might argue that the NBA and the NHL All-Star Game are equally inept, because there's no defense played in any of the three. At least Major League Baseball's game is batter against pitcher, and the guys actually do try and catch the ball when it's hit to them. They do play some defense in that game. So there's one real All-Star game, and then there's 3 facsimiles at best. Good for the NFL for moving off it, because it sure as heck wasn't necessary. But here's the big question, John. This is serious stuff, because I know you do it. I know I do it. I know a lot of us do it. When giving a recap of a guy's career, evaluating, even while he's still playing, he's a 3-time Pro Bowler. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler. Will we now say he's a 6-time Pro Bowl competition player? Does that really mean? And I'm guilty. I'll put my hand up. Guilty as charged. I always make sure I prerequisite with All Pro first. He's a 4-time All Pro, 6-time Pro Bowler. But I do mention Pro Bowls. We use that as kind of a defining line in part. Does that now go completely by the ball? What if you are an all-time great at the Pro Bowl competitions? Does that raise your level of how we look at you when your career is over and done?
No, I don't think so. I've been advocating this for years anyway, and this is what I think is going to happen. They're only going to invite Pro Bowl players for the Pro Bowl skills competition. So I've argued for years.
So, well, are you suggesting more are going to show up than usual? Because you know the way the Pro Bowls work. They have the first announcement, then they have the replacement announcement, then they have the replacement of the replacement announcement, and then finally you get down to about the 6th guy at a position who should make the team who actually played in the game.
Mainly, I think more will show up. I think, Vegas helps, and I think, Hawaii always helped as well. But I think more will show up because there's no game and they can have some fun during the week. But it's not like they're going to be inviting non-Pro Bowl players. So I've said for years, keep the honor, lose the game, because the honor is important not only for what you said, but contracts. Pro Bowl is always used as the standard for incentives and things like that. So keep the honor, lose the game. That's what they're going to do. So you're still going to have Pro Bowl players. They're still going to be naming the Pro Bowl team. And, now that they've readjusted the schedule anyway, you have the Super Bowl teams. It's the week before. You have the Super Bowl teams that can't be involved anyway, and they always have a bunch of Pro Bowlers. So you're still going to have some replacements. I imagine we'll cut that down, though. But the Eagles aren't going to have to worry about that because they're going to be in Glendale, right? We're getting our. They're not going to have any people participating in Pro Bowl week.
One of the two Mac and Mac guys did pick the Eagles.
Yeah,
the Super Bowl.
not me. I'm still hesitant on that one. By the way, if the season ended today, Jody, and newsflash, it does not. But if the season ended today, the MVP is Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I might lean toward that former teammate of his, the left-handed kid down in Florida.
Oh yeah, you love Tua, man. I'm going Jalen Hurts over Tua.
And now this will tick off every single Eagle fan watching right now. The Dolphins have been the best team in football so far. Now, you can only do what you can do. And the Eagles' schedule is the Eagles' schedule. But beating the Ravens in Baltimore and beating the untouchable Buffalo Bills.
Now that's fair. That's
so far and away better than anybody else.
That's fair.
Yeah, Tua's leading the Dolphins. The two best teams in football were been. Oh, by the way, hold on. Let me try not to hurt myself, pat myself on the back. The Eagles and the Dolphins, yours truly selection to play in the Super Bowl this year. They have been the two best. Sorry to say, the Dolphins are slightly ahead of the Eagles, and Tua would be slightly ahead of Jalen.
That's fair. They've had a much more difficult road to 3-0 than the Eagles. So I wouldn't disagree with you there. But I want to point to Birds 365 fans that Johnny Mac's not the hater. Jody Mac is the hater for the Eagles and Jalen Hurts.
How are those Niners going to the Super Bowl this year?
Yeah,
Jimmy G looked good last night against that Denver defense. What was your pick to go to the Super Bowl this year out of the NFC?
Despite the football after week 3.
I'm the hater. Huh? I got the Eagles in the Super Bowl. You got Jimmy G in the Super Bowl, but I'm the hater.
Well, first of all, when I made the prediction, it had nothing to do with Jimmy G. And Trey Lance got hurt and Jimmy G's back. So I took a big blow there. Anybody who knows me knows I'm not a Jimmy G fan. But yeah, despite the football after week 3, that's what Eagles fans are doing. I'll go back to being the hater. Spike the football after week 3, but there's going to be travails up ahead. I don't know where they're coming, but they're coming. Good team, though. Good team. Very good team.
So now you get on me spiking the football. You just called Jalen Hurts the MVP of the NFL.
I said,
who's spiking the football?
If you rewind, I said it's week 3. And oh, by the way, the season doesn't end today.
Yeah.
But if it did end today, we got our buddy Chris Franklin popping in the green room. If it did end today, I think he's the MVP of the league.
Right.
But it doesn't. It doesn't end today.
Understood. If it ended today, it would be the Eagles and the Dolphins in the Super Bowl, and I'd be a rich man.
Well, you still got to have the playoffs, right? You got to get through the playoffs.
Understood.
That 3-game span. Who would even be in the playoffs? Do we have that information? Who would be the seeds? We don't want to go down.
We need to do a little tiebreaker magic because there's a whole bunch of teams that are 2-1 and 1-2, but there are only 2 that are 3-0, and that's the Dolphins and the Eagles. All right, McMullen and McDonald coming back. Chris Franklin, NJ.com, joins us next. Stick around.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Your Mega Mac guys here on Birds 365 after a 24-8 beatdown blowout of the Commanders of Washington. We bring in our buddy Chris Franklin from NJ Live, broadcasting live from his fancy backyard again. We got you outside again, Franklin. You got the coat on. You ready to rock?
Nice out, nice and crisp. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Got the sun shining right now. I feel like I can give better answers. Got the yellow sun right here giving me strength. Yeah, it'll be fun.
The vitamins of the sun. Yeah, gonna give you better. What do we got? Fourth and what? What does the shirt say? Fourth and goal. All right.
That was apropos.
Apropos, yeah, that was a tremendous catch. Well, both of them to get Devontae got them down to the 1 yard line with an amazing catch and took a kind of fell on his back. I got some Tyree Jackson flashbacks. I'm like, ooh, that looked bad. That looked bad. And then he comes out for a couple. The Eagles can't punch it in. They don't want to go for field goal at the end of the half. They could have just taken the Jake Elliott gimme. And man, he high pointed that football. Getty Images or US, one of them had a great photo of him. It was great coverage. This wide receiver group, Chris, it is. I'm amazed at how good AJ Brown is right off the bat. And then Devontae Smith is your number 2. Wow. How good is that group?
They really do a lot, and they can really fit in a thing I think you can do. You can still really interchange them anywhere. You can line them up on the outside. You can line up in a slot. And the way that I think that this offensive coaching staff has used them so far has been really good. And I don't even think we've seen the full playbook and assortment of things they can do yet. Because you look at when you're a team and you see all of a sudden, oh great, we have a bunch formation. We got Brown, Smith, Quez, Watkins on one side. Oh yeah, you only have Dallas Goedert on the other side. Wait, how do you defend that? And I think overall, when you look at the way they've been playing so far, you haven't heard any selfishness. I know the wins help a lot, but these guys actually generally seem like they actually, are cool and happy when the other guy goes off in a game. And so this thing, and we didn't even talk about Zach Pascal. We didn't even talk about it to get deeper. So it's a deep core.
Let me address both you guys with my next question. For John, to prove that I'm not spiking the ball after only 3 games on the Eagles being 3-0, and you missed a 4th and goal. What the hell was that Zach Pascal end around on 4th and goal? Yeah. That was the ugliest play the Eagles ran all day. Did Sirianni overrule Steichen on that one? Did he call that play for his boy Zach Pascal? Because that didn't work and it just turned out ugly.
Sometimes you get too haughty.
Yeah, I wonder if he was, because Zach's from that area, and I wonder if, he probably had a lot of family friends. I wonder if he was trying to get him in the end zone just so he could say, "Hey, all right, there you go, like celebrate while you're home." But
Yeah.
there are better ways to do that than doing that end around, because we know the Eagles don't really do that. And I think in a closed-in space, especially when we have that many guys in the box at the goal line, that's not really the way to go with that sort of play. I think if you're going to do that, you better do that back around like the 30-yard line, 40, we got more space.
Plus, if you're going to do an end around, Chris, you should do it with a end around type of player. Somebody, like Curtis Samuel, for instance, on the other side. The first play of the game, end around, Curtis Samuel, 15 yards. He can do it. Zach Pascal, he's not on my top list of 100 who's going to run end arounds.
I think it's they're trying to go for the element surprise and surprise himself. When they called, it's like, what, me on end around? I mean, I'll do it, but I don't know.
One of the very few shortcoming plays that the Eagles had yesterday. And we're giving a lot of love to the offense in the 24-point second quarter that they had. But the defense was just as dominant and just as impressive yesterday. 9 sacks, 8 from the defensive line, most of the time with no extra blitzes. We know Eagle fans love blitzes, but they didn't need the blitz because they got home with 4 yesterday. The 3 things. Number 1, the Eagles' defensive line was just that good. Number 2, the Commanders' offensive line is injured and not all that good. Or number 3, Carson Wentz still holds on to the damn ball for as long as he does. Put him in the order that they should be put as to why the Eagles came up with 9 sacks yesterday, Chris.
I think it was number 1, Carson Wentz holds the ball on way too much longer than he should have. Then I think it came to, being honest, the Commanders' offensive line was.
Oh, so you're giving the Eagles themselves the least credit of the 3.
And I'll say, because when you look at these guys are playing a lot better, but when you look at that Commanders' offensive line, it was, I mean, I think all 3 of us, we can play the middle of that line right now, and we probably hold up better, maybe better at times, because they just got overworked.
Yeah. That's center. Ooh, that's center. Nick Martin better get ready quick, because they need something at center.
It looked like a blocking. He was using him like a blocking sled. He got under him and he was pushing him back, and all of a sudden he looked up. I felt bad for him because he got getting built back into a Wentz, and then Wentz had some receivers open if he was given time to throw it, but he pulled it back in like the one he wanted to, and then we saw the old Carson Wentz reappear, and 9 sacks later, Eagles have a win.
Well, we're 3-0, Chris, and we're talking here, and something just popped in my inbox. Eagles Super Bowl odds 12-1 to 9-1 to win the NFC, 6-1, now 7-2. And by the way, number 1 in the NFC, still behind Buffalo and Kansas City to win. Number 1 in the NFC to go to the Super Bowl, ahead of the Green Bay Packers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who battled each other yesterday. Everybody getting ahead of themselves after 3 games against Detroit, Minnesota, Washington.
I think a little bit, but I think the schedule is going to help them out a lot, because next week you have Jacksonville, who was no pushover, by the way. We saw what they did to the Chargers yesterday.
Yeah.
Then you start looking at the rest of the schedule, and you're like, all of a sudden they can put the wins up to be a 1 or a 2 seed, and if they do that. That game against the Packers, in my opinion, might be the one where you start looking like, all right, are they playing for home field? Just because of the way it rolls out. I think that stretch they have where they have 3 straight road games might slip them up as well, too, later in the season. So I think it's a little early to go full bore saying, hey, you know what? This is the number 1 seed team right here. They're going to win the NFC. But I can get it if people start talking about the 1 seed overall. Because I think if they get the 1, I can't believe saying this right now, it's like 3 weeks in, but if they ever were able to get it's just like that. But I can see why, because if they got the 1 seed, it's tough to play in Philly, and then the road having to go through Philly. Okay, yeah, but it's still.
All right, but let me add this to the mix, and we haven't touched on this in an hour and a half. Let me get it from 2 guys who were there in the house. I'm just judging by my television because I'm here at home watching the game.
Got a better view than we got.
I
had a broken TV. You had one that worked.
Yes, I absolutely had a better view on my 60-inch flat screen. However, I do not get the feel of the crowd, and you two guys did. I'm just judging off my TV. You sure that wasn't a home game for the Eagles yesterday? Because it sure as hell sounded like one. Sounded like there were just as many Eagle fans in that building as there were Commander fans. It seemed to me like Carson Wentz at times was having trouble communicating his plays. That's not supposed to happen when you're at home. The offense is not supposed to have to scream over the crowd. How big an Eagle crowd was there yesterday in Washington?
I'd probably say about 70-30. 60, it's like 60-40, 70-30. And you can really tell. I mean, when they got backed up towards our far end zone, the one where we see, because you know the wonderful view that we have up at FedEx Field. But when we saw that far end zone, they were so backed up. You saw the 2 false starts penalties that the Commanders had were down that way, and it was all Eagles fans. You started looking behind the Eagles sideline; it was all green. And the area in front of us was the opposite end zone. You started seeing green speckled in there. It was huge, and you start to look, especially the fact that they got out to that fast start. It basically took whatever Commanders fans were out there. It just took them out the game, and it felt. If anything, I don't know if you felt like this way, John, but it felt like anything around, especially the third quarter, it just got weird because it was eerily quiet because Commanders weren't doing anything. The Eagles struggled. It was just like a pin drop. Like, this is not some home field advantage the Commanders have.
Yeah. When it started, I thought it was about 50-50. And then, as you mentioned, when it became clear the Eagles were dominating, then it seemed, I don't know if people snuck out, then it seemed like more of a 60-40, 70-30. And they were, Eagles fans were making all the noise. I know Nick Sirianni said, our goal, by the way, like you can control it, was to get them to use the silent count. And they did. They had to. So, there's certain places, the Chargers, the Rams have to use silent counts at time at home, especially when they're playing certain teams. Yeah, the Commanders, that's a bad situation when you have to use a silent count at home. But Eagles fans, they travel well. That's why Detroit surprised me so much, because they didn't let the Eagles fans in Detroit. It really, really surprised me. Here, obviously, it's so close, and they took over, as they usually do.
Yeah, and I think with especially Detroit, I think any glimmer of hope, because you can see they're a fan base that is just waiting to at least, make some noise, at least get back to the playoffs, at least be that one. And they're in a way, you look at Detroit, you see a lot of like the Eagles fans and right now the Phillies fans when it comes to that matter. When you're waiting so long to get the playoffs, you want to cheer their team on, and they finally got a chance. They thought they finally had a chance to do so. Now the results haven't been the way it should be, but I think Detroit's a better team because of it, and I think overall the product they put in the field's better. So
I think they just got to learn how to win. The Lions, I think they're a good team, but they don't know how to win yet. And I think when they get over the hump, it'll be pretty good. But this is not Lions 365, so we'll keep it on the Eagles. Defensively, actually, I want to talk about Shane Steichen. I was going to talk about Jonathan Gannon, but JG got the 3 coaching interviews in the offseason. Gets a lot of angst here in Philadelphia. Certainly his defense has played well over the past 2 weeks, but I got to tell you, Chris, if this offense continues to play like this, Shane Steichen's the one out the door. I mean, he's getting a head coaching job if they continue to play at this level. Agree or disagree?
I will heartily agree, because when you look at his track record, he was there for Justin Herbert's rookie season, and look at the year he had when it came there. Then he comes here with Jalen Hurts. Well, almost like Carson Wentz. He comes here with Jalen Hurts, and you look at the progression that he's continually made. I mean, you see him over there. I think it kind of has helped both Herbert and Hurts when it comes to the fact that he was a former quarterback himself, so he could put himself in that situation. He continually works. He and Brian Johnson together working with his footwork as well too, and he calls the offense as balanced as he possibly can. Another knock with him when he was coming over the Eagles, where all he does is run the ball and throw screens. I think when you look at the situation they had at the Chargers, he had a rookie quarterback. Make it feel comfortable. I think when you look at his play design, when you look at the flow of the play call, and we've seen teams want to bring in guys who can call their own plays to be the head coaches. The teams like to do that. So I think he definitely is. I wouldn't be surprised. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if next year we're looking at Brian Johnson as the offensive coordinator and Denard Wilson as the defensive coordinator. Because I still think Gannon's got that cachet around the league that Eagles might have 2 coordinator spots they have to fill.
All right, Eagle beat guy question, because you guys handle this as much as you do. For the 3rd time this season, and you can only do it 3 times, the Eagles called up Covey from the practice squad to return punts. Didn't, again, do anything. He caught them all. He almost misplayed one, but he got it and didn't break anything. So it's not like he's wowed anybody so far this year. There were very few Eagle return kicks yesterday because the team didn't score. So that's about it. Get the kickoff stuff over and done with. Again, not a strong suit of the Eagles so far, the return game. But what's going to happen with Covey? Is he a elevation next week? Does he make it on to the 53? Who's coming off? Does Howie Roseman have a move up his sleeve for this week with the Eagles return game?
I think they still have 52, so I think they make sure they have a spot to move them up.
They only have 52, yeah.
And just look, I think it's still Covey. I really think he's going to be the one there, elevate him. I think it's a way to basically prorate the contract, not having to pay him for 3 weeks of the full thing. They can just use him at the elevation salary. They move him up that way, and I think they feel the confidence like he's the one that can consistently catch the ball way back there. And I say that now after he muffed that one yesterday, but I think when you look at, I think they value that. No, frankly, they value that more sometimes than actually, making the runs. They would like to have somebody that can break one off. And short of like signing Deshaun Jackson, still sitting out there as just like, hey, come back, you're a punt return only. I think they just roll with Covey from here on out. And
I thought it was interesting, Chris, that when Washington was backed up and they had a chance for a return, they put Devontae out there, which I liked, but that kind of tells you, all right, well, they know what Britton is, and that's the safety, the security guy. And he did, muff one. He was able to get it back. To me, this is interesting because, and by the way, Britton got beaten up, man. It's like, oh my! You talk about small. We talk about Jody. You brought up Devontae Smith coming in 160. Britton Kobe is. I'm concerned for his safety, and he's such a nice guy. Another little tweak: they put him back on kickoffs. Nobody noticed because they were just kicking touchbacks. But they finally realized, hey, Quez, thanks for trying, but he's just not good at kick return. So they have a spot. I think they're going to elevate him, but I don't think he's safe. If they can find something else moving forward, that's how I would describe it. Your thoughts on that?
It's almost like they used it. I remember seeing them with that. They put Devontae. It's almost like they used it when they had a. I'm drawing a blank, but they brought in Jackson at times when they needed a spark or they had a chance
high
to really
leverage
get
situation. Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised they did that. I mean, when you look at the options the team had right now between that, Quez hasn't done it since college, so you can't put him back there. I mean, you had Avonte Maddox, so he hasn't done it in college since that, and you don't want to put 2 guys like Maddox or Smith, even Watkins. I put him in that thing because I think he's important to what they do on offense to have the position where they get the point like, oh, I can return this. They catch the ball. Next thing you know, they get smacked, and you're without them for the rest of the game. So it's a really limited choice they have, and I think that it's almost like the best of all the situations they go with Kobe. Although this all season, they got to get somebody because if they want to get somebody dynamic, they got to go right and get somebody.
Right. I remember back to the preseason, I brought Devontae Smith up because he did it on a limited basis, but he did it tremendously well at Alabama. Yeah. And Johnny hit the nail on the head. He said, don't be surprised if in specific situations they put him back there. And sure enough, the first one came up yesterday that they gave him a shot. And I think they'll continue to do that. Let me ask you about the running game. Was it needed yesterday? This is kind of playing into what John said early in the show that, come on, don't worry about the second half. The game was over by halftime, so don't put too much emphasis on the second half. Same thing with the running game. They really didn't run the ball much yesterday, and when they did, it wasn't all that effective. Miles didn't have a great game. Neither Scott nor Gainwell made any kind of plays when they were handed the football. Just chalk it up as one of those didn't need it, so don't sweat it, or a legit concern from yesterday, Chris?
Well, I think when you look overall, once William Jackson III was inactive, I thought that was like, okay, you know what? Usually I'm more of a balanced guy to run and set up the pass and everything. I think once Jackson went, I was like, okay, just throw the ball down the field because they were
Rashad
really
Wild Goose not scaring you?
Yeah, the goose got cooked. Too. So yeah, nah. I'm sitting here looking like, and I'm looking at the field, and I'm looking at the way they were playing their techniques, sitting there like they could, if the Eagles really decided to, you know what, let's just throw down. Jalen Hurts could have really put up like 450, 500 yards if he wanted to, if they really wanted to call that play, because there were receivers getting open. They tried. The Commanders were trying everything. They really were trying everything. They were trying all this empty zone didn't work because they're coming underneath. They're trying man to man, didn't work because they were going up top. So yeah, I'm not concerned as of yet. I think, especially with that big lead that they had, but I think they just did it. I think they were trying to run. If they had a running clock in the NFL, they were going to try to do that. Just run. Okay, that's good enough.
Would be nice, yeah.
Oh,
but one of the things I tell Jody this all the time. I think Detroit was the offensive line, and with Washington, it was Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. And Nick Sirianni talked about it all week, so it wasn't like revisionist history. He was like, "Those guys are good. Those guys are really good." And, that's just the strength of Washington. It's tough to run on those guys. And now in the first couple of weeks, they have been run on. So I think people kind of, said, well, they've been getting gashed, but all of a sudden you do the overcorrection like the Eagles did week 1 to week 2. They had all the missed tackles. You have the overcorrection. They said, all right, we got to button this down, especially with the top ranked running offense coming in. And I just think Allen's that good. I think Payne's that good. And you're not going to face those guys every week. So take advantage of Rashad Wild Goose and those corners in that defensive backfield. I think that's smart coaching. I give Nick and Shane and Jonathan Gannon as well from the defensive side a lot of credit for the game planning.
Yeah, and you look at, and Allen was really getting inside that gap between Landon Dickerson and Jason Kelsey,
and Landon wasn't healthy either. He was playing through a foot injury.
And we saw, I think he saw, especially when they got that lead, they pulled everybody out when it comes in at Landon, Dallas, and everybody else. They started pulling them out. But you look at the interior line. I think that's going back to a previous question. I think when you look at teams like the Rams, when you look at Vita Vea and the Bucks, I think that's where I think teams can take advantage of it right now, because it just seems like we got those powerful guys in the middle of that offensive line. They seem to have a little bit issues with that as well too, and they get the pressure up the middle. Thankfully, for the Eagles, they have a guy like Hurts who can elude that and move out and roll out to if he needs to. But I think that's something to watch as the year goes on, and see how if they are able to correct it when they go against big physical guys in the middle of the line like that.
All right, Chris, now that we've gotten the Carson Wentz reunion in the rearview mirror coming up this week, the head coach of the opposition is a guy who's quite familiar to the Philadelphia fan base. I'll go way out on a limb and say the Jaguar fans won't be taking over Lincoln Financial Field the way the Eagle fans did yesterday down there in Washington. But how many Eagle fans will be wearing a visor in homage to the only coach who ever brought the Super Bowl here to Philadelphia?
I think, see, the visor could be used for Nick too. See, I'm like, all right, cool. I can see both, but you know what? I think there'll be a few signs. I don't know if people are going to lay flowers at the feet of the statue for Doug and Nick at the bottom, going pay homage and going, thank you, Doug, and everything. And they'll play the video tributes on the board and everything. But it's going to be, I think it's going to be another one of those things where these guys are going to respect them. I think this game's going to be a lot closer than people think. I think the Jaguars are very athletic, and I think they're on defensively. They have players who could keep up with Hurts if they decide to spy a little bit. I think also in the corner. So I look overall, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if this winds up being like a 10-point, 7-point Eagles win. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit like 4-3. So Jaguars because they have their own. They present their own problems for Eagles as well too.
Yeah. At C. Franklin News, read him at nj.com. He's everywhere now. South Jersey Times, Lehigh Valley Live, Times of Trenton. You can read Chris there as well. One more Doug question, because we just got through Jalen Reagor week, and now we got through Carson Wentz week. Now, obviously, Eagles fans didn't like Jalen Reagor. They know,
and you know who's the week after? Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
Just one after the other after the other.
And Zach, now Doug is well liked and Zach is well liked. That Eagles fans will be nice to Doug Peterson, at least till the game starts, right, Chris? It's not going to be the angst of Jalen Reagor or Carson Wentz.
Because I think they'll still look and go, well, Doug was all right. The question about Doug at the end was about his coaching placements, and that's when it ultimately let him go. But I think overall, when you look at what Doug did for the city and his mannerisms and everything else, I think people liked him a lot around here, and especially at the question. Like, he galvanized the city over that 2017 season, and he got a pass for most of it. I think after that until 2020 was like, ugh. So I think a lot of people they'll still have very good feelings for him. It's not going to be one of those "we hate you" blah blah blah. I think they may laugh a little bit if they start to see some of those same play calls and everything else that we saw 3 years ago with a lot of.
I should have brought up Press Taylor. Press can coach again a little bit, and our buddy Ryan Paganetti doing the fourth down stuff in Jacksonville. They're being very
former Eagle Mike Caldwell, linebacker Mike Caldwell too. So I think it's gonna be fun to watch, and I hope Doug changes his playbook a little bit because a lot of these guys might still remember some of his calls and mannerisms as well too.
All right, last thing for me, Chris. Number one, what the hell are those bird noises? Is that your phone?
That's nice, man.
No, it's actually birds. We have Blue Jays, Cardinals, and everything. It's like something nature right here.
That is serene. Now I know why Chris is out there. I'd be out there writing. Right outside.
Sounded like Eagle fans to me, but all right. Last thing. Will the Eagles be in sole possession of first place by this time tomorrow, or will they be sharing that with the New York Giants?
I think they'll be sharing it with the Giants. I think they do.
Win tonight, huh?
I think they will because
Giants.
I think they.
Whoa. I got to think about Brian Daboll for Coach of the Year if he gets to 3-0. I'm giving him Coach of the Year.
Take that squad, yeah.
I think so McMullen's got Hurts as MVP and Daboll as Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
Early lead. Should be a good one tonight. I don't know if it's going to be pretty football, but it should be competitive. So we'll be talking about it here on Birds tomorrow. We'll do so without the bird noises and Chris Franklin. So it's going to be a tougher task for us tomorrow. Chris, thanks for hopping on.
Birds. Go Birds. Say go Birds here.
Can you get the Birds to do that one more time? See if you can get them.
See. Talk now. That's right. Now they want to go with B-Shot now, I guess.
They might say go Birds. Chris, always a pleasure, buddy. Thanks, pal.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Chris Franklin from his backyard with the birds serenading us in the background.
Yeah.
Cheering on the birds that we follow on a day-in basis here on Birds 365. All right, McMullen and McDonald, Mac and Mac guys, come back, put a bow in the show.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
At Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Your MAGA Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald here on Birds 365, trying to put a little bow on the show here. And yes, we'll be tuned tonight to the Giants and the Cowboys, because if the Giants win, they're actually one of 3 teams in the NFL that haven't lost yet. Eagles, Dolphins, Giants. Who would have thought that? 3 teams undefeated after 3 weeks, and 2 of them reside in the NFC East. Yeah, we didn't really see that one coming. All right, Johnny Mac, I know you've got responsibilities today, including hearing from Nick Sirianni on his day after press conference. What throwback jersey will he be wearing today?
Yeah, the pandering sheep was back. My dog is 5 minutes early. She wants to go out, so I have a lot to do today. But yeah, he brought the Mike Quick jersey out and said Mike's better than Art Monk. Well, it's, Art's in the Hall of Fame, but yeah, I mean, we got some Nick Sirianni pandering, but it's all good. With 3-0, you can do what you want. And Nick's always been.
Can I take a little bit of a guess here? Phillies need a little help. Lost that game.
Yeah, maybe he hasn't. I do not believe. I'm pretty sure. I'm there he has not broken out the Phillies gear this year.
Yeah, I think
now
he's
you got the Sixers.
Johnny Mac, Jody Mac prediction. Maybe Nick's even listening, standing in front of his wardrobe as we speak. Phillies need a little love there, Coach. You're 3-0. You can't lose. How about lending a helping hand to your baseball team here in town?
This is my prediction, only a prediction. I don't think you're going to see Phillies, Sixers, or Flyers gear this year.
He's going real. This year, whole year.
Yeah, this year.
He's so zeroed in on the Eagles, he can't show some love to the other teams. The pander in chief.
Nick listens to stuff, and he hears everything. He's not like Jalen Hurts. He hears everything. I think he took some of that to heart last year. Too much over the top. He's just going to stick.
Oh yeah. So let me roll in a Mike Quick jersey. Come on.
No. I'm saying he's going to stick with the Eagles stuff. Eagles every day. It's Kenny Gainwell football camp. It's Mike Quick jersey. It's Brandon Graham shirt. It's Lane Pave the Lane shirt. No, he's
staying in his lane. Yes, is what you're saying. He's not getting out.
It's going to be all
Eagle lane
stuff
this year.
Yes, it's going to be all Eagles stuff. I was still pandering from the Eagles' perspective, but that makes some sense. I have no problem with that. When you start breaking out the Phillies gear, and oh, by the way, he's got, when he would wear the Phillies or Sixers gear or Flyers gear, he'd have it off to the side. He'd put it on for the press conference and then immediately take it off. So it was, kind of, you see the green underneath. It's kind of absurd. But anyway, yeah.
Here's the reason why I think he could go Phillies stack. The Phillies were out. I know one guy got more video time than anybody else. Bryce Harper prominently there Monday night versus the Vikings last week. Phillies were taking the Eagles back. The Eagles turn around, do the same. The lead guy.
No. I think he's staying. He's all Eagles all the time.
I'm going.
I could be. It wouldn't be the first time I'm wrong, as you pointed out, Jody. I've already buried with the 49ers. Thanks, Kyle Shanahan. Thank you.
Your boy Kyle is going to have to make it up as he goes along here. All right, then we'll see what Nick rolls out in today. He's not going to tip his hand. He is Mr. Competitive Advantage. If anybody asks a question about Doug Peterson, what the hell does he say? He wasn't here when Doug Peterson kind of opened the door for him to become a head coach in the National Football League.
I'll tell you exactly what he's going to say. I'm pretty sure. I don't even think he knows, because I think I've asked him this before. I don't think he ever knew Doug, or, other than, meeting. But he'll say something like, but I know Frank Reich really well, and he speaks so highly of Doug. So he'll go down that route. And that's where I think he'll go. He'll lean on the conduit of Frank Reich, and give Doug Peterson his flowers, as well he should, by the way.
That's probably a smart way to handle it. We'll see how Sirianni does. I know you got to get over there, get the dog out. I'll get you back here in 22 hours. You ready to do another Birds 365
Let's
tomorrow?
do it. 3-0, Jody. 3-0. We're 300. What show is this? 369. 369-0. We're 369-0. I got to wait
about that. We got more wins and losses. We know that. And today was a win. Thanks to Chris Franklin and Tommy Lawlor for hopping on. We'll be back in 2-2, Eagles fans.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.